Тебе еще не раз снега не было?
Не помню. Who said think good and will be good? It will be good.
Who's the original
Yeah.
Tzemach Tzedek? Third Rebbe of Chabad. Third, yeah. Okay, so we're learning about anger. We said that anger is a very negative character trait, very destructive character trait. One of the things that it says about anger is that in Tanya, there's a part of Tanya, one volume of Tanya, it's called Igeret HaTshuva. It's all about Tshuva. And one of the things it discusses in the beginning is that one of the remedies for Tshuva is fast. But years ago, this was a way of doing Tshuva, just like Yom Kippur. The theme of Yom Kippur is Tshuva, and on Yom Kippur we fast. So anytime a person is doing Tshuva, one of the things to do. And then he brings down from the Arizal that means that every Aveira is different. So there's actually a certain amount of days of fasting for each Aveira. So if a person, for example, violated Shabbos, they should fast so many times. If a person violated Yom Kippur, they should fast so many times. If a person forgot to eat matzah on Pesach so many times. Some of these things are 70 times, 63 times. It's all based on what it says in Kabbalah. When it comes to anger, it says that if a person loses their temper, they should fast 151 times. Try to imagine every time I lose my temper, I have to fast 151 days. But it just shows us that it's somewhere up there on the ladder, that it's so severe that it needs 151 days, more than many other things that seem to be so much more serious. So we just did number one, and we said that today, number one is whoever loses the temper, it's like they're worshiping idols. So I said to you that there's a chapter in Tanya, which is chapter 25, Chov Hey, in Igeret HaKodesh. And in that chapter, the Alter Rebbe talks about anger in the way that I explained it yesterday. So I made copies, and we'll go over it together inside. There's also a few other things here, but let me find these copies. Here it is. So, two for you. And then we have a bunch here for you on this side. It's a long chapter, a lot of details. We're not going to do the whole chapter. We're just going to do the first part of the chapter. Yeah. Ariel, that's you. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. You'll read the introduction. These are letters, and I don't know what the English word, I don't usually use it, but it means letters from the Alter Rebbe that he sent to the Hasidim. And there was once a very big controversy about something that the Baal Shem Tov said, something that was written in the name of the Baal Shem Tov. And the Alter Rebbe wrote this letter to explain it and to show that people misunderstood it. So let's start from the beginning here on page 447. Lahavin Imre Bina. It's a quote from an expression of a place in the Torah. It says to understand or comprehend the words of understanding, meaning the words of Torah. It's written in a book called Tzavat Rivosh, which means the Testament of Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov. Rivosh is an acronym, Reish Yud Beis Shin, Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem, or Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem. And testament means something that a person writes before they pass away. So here's a book which is a collection of things that he said supposedly before he passed away. So the Alter Rebbe says, page 448, though in fact it's not at all his will or testament. And not only this book is not, but he did not ordain anything before his passing. He didn't give me any instructions that before his passing, he's letting everybody know they should do this, this, this. He never did that. So what is this book about? They are teachings which are merely gleanings of his pure sayings, which were gathered as a compilation after compilation. In other words, someone went into the teachings of Baal Shem Tov, took it from here, took it from there, and put together a book of sayings. But the person who did that wasn't written by the Baal Shem Tov himself, one of his students, did not know how to phrase his teaching exactly, precisely. The connotation, however, of the teaching is absolutely true. In other words, there are certain words mean the same thing, but the precise meaning of one is different than the other. And that's what happened in this story, that the person who documented the words of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov spoke in Yiddish, not in Hebrew. This person wrote it in Hebrew. So when he translated from Yiddish to Hebrew, in order to understand this will be understood by first considering the teachings of our sage of blessed memory. Whoever is in a rage resembles an idolater. A person is in a rage, it's as if he's worshiping idols. And if you remember, I mentioned it in one of the classes, I don't know if it was this class or a different class, that there's a big discussion among scholars whether the Rambam, Maimonides, studied Kabbalah. He doesn't mention anything about Kabbalah. He was definitely a philosopher. He wrote philosophy books and halacha books, but nothing on Kabbalah. So some scholars believe that he really wasn't knowledgeable in Kabbalah, even though he knew everything else, but not Kabbalah. There are some scholars that believe that he was knowledgeable in Kabbalah. The rabbis of Chabad have a tradition that not only he was knowledgeable in Kabbalah, he was a giant in Kabbalah. And the reason why he doesn't say anything based on Kabbalah or bring anything from Kabbalah, because in that generation, it was a time that the secrets of Kabbalah had to be much more hidden than later generations and even earlier generations. So therefore, we don't see any Kabbalah from him, but really he knew Kabbalah. So someone in our generation printed a book and made a collection of different things the Rambam says, and the only source to it is Kabbalah, the Zohar, which proves that he must have known it. This is one of them. If you look in footnote 7, this quote, whoever gets angry, it resembles an idolater, it says it's in the Zohar and in the Rambam. And the Rambam writes it in the name of earlier sages. So it doesn't say it's in the name of Zohar, but the name of earlier sages.
Rambam says.
The Rambam says that. Now he's quoting earlier sages.
He doesn't say
Zohar, because he was hiding the fact that it came from the Zohar. But in earlier writings, like in Gemara, we don't find it, only in Zohar. So this is one of them. The reason for this is clear to those who know understanding. Why is getting angry like Avodah Zarah? Because at the time of a person's anger, faith in Hashem and Hashem's individual divine providence left this person. It's as if the faith just abandoned him at that moment. For were he to believe that what happened to him was God's doing, he would not be angry at all. true, it is a person possessed of free choice that is cursing him or striking him physically or causing damage to his property. And therefore, that person will be guilty according to the law of man and the law of heaven for his evil choices. Nevertheless, as regards the person harmed, this incident was already decreed in heaven that this person should be harmed. And Hashem has many agents how to do it. So if I was meant to lose $1,000 and someone stole money from me, so even though that person who stole the money, he made a bad choice to do something evil, to commit a crime, but the fact that I lost the money means that Hashem decreed that I should lose money. Actually, I'll tell you a story that happened to a relative of mine who worked in the diamond district. The diamonds, they keep them in small little plastic bags. So, I'm teaching, yeah. Small little plastic bags, and he had those in his attaché case. He's carrying it home. He stops off at a place to buy a ticket for a bus, puts it out on the floor. Sorry, maybe it's important. Hello. Okay. Yeah. So what happened was that as he's standing there buying the ticket, suddenly he feels someone pulls it out from under him. He turns around and someone screams, "He went that way, he went that way." So he turns that way and starts running, doesn't see him. He turned around, he doesn't see the other guy. He realized that they were working together. He stole it, and the other one screamed he went that way to mislead him. In the meantime, he ran the other way and disappeared. He was very upset. He took this home to work on it. I'm sorry. It's Erev, a wedding, so a lot of things are happening. Hello.
Today?
Okay. Okay. So the next day, he gets a phone call. And someone says, I found your attaché case. Has your name on it. How can I bring it to you? I said, who needs the attaché case? When you lost $100,000, the attaché case is worth $5.75. Big deal. But anyway, the guy said, I would like to bring it to you. I told him where he works in Manhattan, and he came to bring it to him. And he said, actually, I was walking by the street, and I was walking with my daughter, and she saw this attaché case in the garbage, and it looks new. So she told me that she wants it, a little girl. And I said, I'm not going to take things out of the garbage, but it's new. She started crying. Okay, so I took it. When I took it, I see there's a name on it and a telephone number on it. So I called you. I have to give back a lost object. So I say, thank you. Anyway, when he leaves, he opens up the attaché case. And in the attaché case, they had a newspaper. He picks up the newspaper like this, and a little plastic bag with all the diamonds fall out. Which means the thief probably opened the case. All he saw was a newspaper. He didn't see the diamonds. It fell between the papers. So he threw it in the garbage. What does he need it for? And now someone should find it with his name, bring it back to him, and he got the diamonds. So what does it mean? This man who was a thief made a choice to do something bad. But it wasn't decreed that he should lose the money. So he ended up getting it back. That's what he's saying here. Even though it's a person who has free choice that is either cursing him, I think he's choosing three scenarios. One is where someone hurts you emotionally, one is where someone hurts you physically, and one is where someone hurts you financially. You see that? Cursing him is hurting you emotionally, striking him is hurting you physically, physical violence, and causing damage to the property is hurting you financially. And therefore, that person is guilty according to the law of man and the law of heaven. Nevertheless, and he'll be punished for what he did. But regarding the person that was harmed, the victim, this incident was already decreed in heaven. And Hashem has many agents, which means if I was meant to lose the money, he'll find a different way of me losing the money. If this person would have made a better choice. Let's go to the next page, 450. Not only that, but at the very moment at which the offender, this bad person, strikes him or curses him, is invested in him a force from Hashem and the breath of Hashem's mouth, which animates and sustains him. Because without that, he couldn't live. Like it says, Ki Hashem Omer Kavo. There's a verse where King David says, God told him to curse. There was a man by the name of Shimei. He was a man, important person in the kingdom. And he cursed King David. You can imagine that cursing a king is one of the worst kind of acts of this rebellion. But King David said Hashem told him to curse. Where did he say to Shimei? Where do we find written that Hashem told him to curse David? This is what he meant. This thought that occurred in Shimei's heart and in Shimei's mind to curse David descended from Hashem. Now it was his choice to take action or to reject the thought. And the breath of Hashem's mouth, which animates all of the hosts of heaven, that breath of Hashem's mouth animated the spirit of this person, Shimei, at the time that he spoke the words to King David. Because if the breath of Hashem's mouth were departed from the spirit of Shimei for a single moment, he could not have spoken at all. Hashem gives him the power to speak. And that's what it means Hashem told him to speak. Hashem gives him the power and the ability that it should be a speaking person. Because other than that, where does he have the power to speak from? So basically, what we're learning here is like this. When something happens, which is no human intervention, let's say a person has a loss because of a flood, because of bad weather, because of something that happened in nature, a volcano, a earthquake. In America, we call this an act of God. Even in insurance, do they have to pay for it? Not have to pay. This is called an act of God. It's actually a term that's used in the financial world. Mm-hmm. It's easy to accept, okay, this was an act of God. God made this crazy weather, a flood or a storm or a hurricane or a tornado, and look what happened. But what if a person hurt me? It's hard for me to see that it's an act of God. It's a person that hurt me, a person that said something which is offensive, and this person has free choice. So in that case, I do blame the person. But the truth is, if I believe in Hashem that I'm supposed to believe, I would realize what the person does is his free choice. But the fact that I got hurt, whether it's emotionally, physically, or financially, it must be that it was meant to be from Hashem that I get hurt. And if I recognize that it's from Hashem, I'll relate to it differently than if I think of, there's a person that did it, where then I'm full of anger and hate and revenge and all sorts of very negative emotions. Now, we don't understand why Hashem did it, what's the purpose, but I do understand. That's another question. How does it help me? I still don't understand why Hashem did it. And the answer is, we don't understand why Hashem did it, but we do understand that we don't understand. We could do that. Do you understand? we should be able to, one of the reasons why we get very upset when I think Hashem did it, because I'm thinking of Hashem like another person. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's the boss. But if he does something, how can it be that I don't understand it? It doesn't make sense to me. It can't be. If I don't understand it, it doesn't make sense. That's silly. If I would even recognize one iota, the distance between my intelligence and Hashem's intelligence, that would be something which would make it clear to me that I can't even expect to understand what Hashem is doing. Which means, imagine if you would hear 2 3-year-olds having a conversation, where the 3-year-old says to another 3-year-old, my mother did this, I think it's very stupid. And you start laughing. Why are you laughing? Because the 3-year-old, what do they know about life? What do they know about anything? And they're already making this judgment. Like, if I, as a 3-year-old, don't understand what my mother is doing, it must be stupid. So it's funny. to see how much a 3-year-old doesn't even understand what they don't understand. But the distance between a 3-year-old and a 25-year-old, which is the mother, is just 22 years. That's it. And 22 years from now, the 3-year-old will be 25-year-old. The distance between us and Hashem is infinite. So it is so hard to understand that I shouldn't expect to understand, that I can't understand. And even though we don't really understand what's happening, but knowing that alone could be, to some degree, soothing and helping me accept what happened and not react in a negative, emotional way. Doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, doesn't mean that it's not sad, but it wouldn't lead to anger. So according to this, if someone wants to hurt me, because I'm meant to get hurt, chas v'shalom, and then the person says to himself, I shouldn't really do this, it's wrong, and they don't do it, but if this is meant to happen to me, it'll happen in a different way. Sometimes no one stole the money from you, but just lost it. You misplaced it, you put it down, it fell off, or wind blew it away, which means it was meant for you to lose it. If there was nobody around you that was going to steal it, so Hashem made you lose it a different way. And the same with the opposite. You can win something in a lottery, you can find something on the street. There are different ways Hashem makes me get something, which is good that I was meant to get. And if this way didn't work, that way could work. Yeah.
So if you win the lottery or find something on the street, you need to pick it up or leave it.
That's how much money.
And if you pick it up, what do you do? How much do you get to tzedakah? All of it, or just part?
No, generally speaking, it's a big subject in Jewish law about finding a lost object. And the general answer is like this. If there's some sort of way of identifying it, let's say like this person had a name on it, then you're obligated to pick it up and find the owner and give it back. If not, then you're not obligated to do that. You could leave it. If you do take it, then the custom is people give 10% and stuff. Now, of course, America is very different. And in general, the world is different than years ago. Years ago, people lived in small little villages, small little places. So if you found something on the floor, it belonged to one of the 50 families that live here. So people would go to shul, they make an announcement, hang up. Even here, if you find something like in a place like 770, you find something here on the floor. The right thing to do is you put up a sign. Did anybody lose something important? You don't say exactly what it is, because unfortunately somebody might say, yeah, I lost a red wallet with $35 inside, because you wrote that down on the list. So you're right, did somebody lose money? And then you ask them to identify it. Well, how much money was it? Where was it? Was it wrapped around in paper? Was it in a wallet? What did the wallet look like? According to Allah, if they can identify it, I'm obligated to return it. Yeah. Right. So this is what I said, that the Alter Rebbe is telling us to recognize that if I do lose my temper, that's an indication that in the moment I lost my belief that everything that's happening to me is really for Hashem. And let's finish this line. Speaking, this person spoke in a very negative way towards David. He cursed him. So he said, but nevertheless, there had to be God's energy in this person to enable him to speak. For if the breath of Hashem's mouth were departed from the spirit of Shimon for a single moment, he couldn't even have spoken. So it means that Hashem is also behind him. So again, it doesn't mean, and I said this many times, Hashgacha, let's remember, is not regarding the future. Like somebody once told me, I can't make a decision. Hashgacha always helps you make the decision. If I don't make a decision, and then something happens, oh, okay, Hashgacha. When I have to do something in the future, I base it on the directions in Torah. which is, person has a cold. Should I go to the doctor or not go to the doctor? There's direction in Torah. The Torah says, protect your health. So I'm obligated to go to the doctor. But then when they ask a question, why did I get sick yesterday or 2 days ago? We say that's Hashgacha Pratis. It was meant to be. And it came from Hashem and there's a purpose. And don't be upset about it. So what if I became sick because someone else who had a cold was around the room and I caught it from them? You can get all angry at that person or recognize, obviously, this was meant to be from Hashem. So if a person would think along those lines, now the question is something else, which maybe we'll need more time to talk about. Being that we all belong to the human race, don't tell anybody, keep quiet amongst ourselves. Human beings, when we get upset, we get upset. And you start telling yourself, Hashem is doing this. Somehow it doesn't work. It just bounces off. You're so upset. You're so angry. You're so emotional. It's very hard to control that. So what do? So first of all, I want to say there's a sefer, very famous book, which talks about character traits, and it's called Reishis Chochmah. And in that book, he says that if a person is angry, one of the things to do, first of all, is not to speak. Because when you start speaking about what you're upset, at the moment, the heat of the anger, you'll get more angry. Somehow speech generates more emotional energy. By the way, it works with positive and negative. If a person feels love to someone and they start talking verbally about their feelings of love, as they speak, it'll generate even stronger feelings of love. And if you're angry, as you speak, it'll generate stronger feelings of anger. So the best thing is not to speak, be quiet. How long should you be quiet for?
Until you're not angry.
Exactly. Everybody's different. Some people, they tell you to count until 100. Some people have to count until 1,000. And some people have to count until they get to 10,000. It depends how much anger energy there is. But you get and allow the energy to a little bit calm down. Because when you're very angry, you're not going to be reasonable. You're not going to be logical. It's just going to be emotional.
Also for like sadness, so like happy, you talk more or no?
Yes, that can work. It will work that way also.
So I'm thinking sadness, do you stay in your head until you're not sad anymore, or you talk with?
Well, actually, in reference to that, there's a famous pasuk, which means if a person has anxiety about something or they're upset about something, it's good to speak to another person about it and get it off your chest, and that could help.
Maybe another happy person.
What?
Maybe a person who's happy.
Definitely. Definitely. And I just want to add one more thing, not to walk away with a mistake. Sometimes people do that, and the other party gets even more upset because you're dismissing me, you're not talking to me. Let's say in a marriage, let's say roommates, not a marriage, even friends. You get so angry they did something, but then you say, if I talk now, I'm going to say crazy things. I'll be so angry, let me not talk. So the other person feels you're dismissing them, you're ignoring them, and that's even worse. So what do? So I think the practical advice would be, you tell the person, I'm not going to talk about it now, not because I'm ignoring you or dismissing you, but because I'm too emotional to talk about it. And when things come down, we'll talk. So in that way, you're not talking now, but at the same time, you're not ignoring and dismissing the other person. Like there's a question, what's worse? You scream at somebody or you ignore them? Which is a worse offense?
Being ignored is really painful sometimes.
Which is worse? What would you say? I think according to Torah, maybe psychology would also say the same thing. That when you scream at somebody, at least you recognize that they're there and I'm screaming at you. When you ignore them, it's like you're totally, you're declaring them as a non-existent entity. You're not giving them any substance. Like in my mind, you don't exist. That's even harsher. I'm not saying it's a good idea to scream at somebody. I'm just saying ignoring could also be very, very, very damaging, very hurtful. So we shouldn't look at it as like, oh, no big deal, I'm not talking. You have to make it clear to the other party why you're not talking. It's not because you're ignoring, because you feel right now it'll come out the wrong way, you'll say the wrong words. When a person's angry, very often their tongue has a life of its own, and that's not a good plan. Okay, to be continued. Mirz Hashem, next week. Good Shabbos, everybody. Oh, also, am I teaching you tomorrow? Yeah, we'll share. No, I'm not going to.
Tonight is your wedding?
No, Monday.
Oh.
Tonight's the wedding. I don't think I will be here this morning.
I know, I was thinking, I was like, wow, you're really dedicated.
I am. I would change my mind.